professional boundary. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know." He stood, putting distance between them. "Patricia will be here Monday at 8. I'll have Luca show you the new therapy space this afternoon so you know where to go." Professional again. Controlled again. Like the confession had never happened. But Lauren's heart was pounding, and her hands were still shaking, and everything she thought she understood about her relationship with Anthony Mancini had just been turned completely upside down. 3 weeks passed in a new rhythm. Lauren trained with Patricia Simmons every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning at 7 in the converted therapy space on the second floor. The room had been transformed completely. Professional rehabilitation equipment lined one wall, padded mats covered the floor, mirrors reflected natural light from the large windows. Patricia was nothing like Ryan. She was methodical, clinical, focused entirely on biomechanics and recovery metrics. She didn't make small talk or ask personal questions. She assessed Lauren's progress with the detached efficiency of someone who'd spent 3 decades rebuilding broken bodies. And Lauren's recovery accelerated dramatically under her care. The limp disappeared completely. The persistent ache that had followed her through every day since the accident faded to nothing. By the end of the second week, Patricia had her doing exercises that would have been impossible a month ago. "Your muscle memory is excellent," Patricia observed during a Friday session, watching Lauren move through a complex squat variation. "The foundation was always there. We just had to remind your nervous system how to access it." Lauren finished the set, breathing hard, but controlled. "How much longer until I can try running?" "Another week. We'll start with light jogging on the treadmill, assess how the joint responds, then build from there." Patricia made notes on her tablet. "But you're progressing ahead of schedule. Whatever work you did before the accident, your body hasn't forgotten it." What Lauren's body also hadn't forgotten was the awareness of being watched. Anthony observed every session. Not obviously, not intrusively. But Lauren could see him through the glass wall that separated the therapy room from the hallway. He'd walk past with a file in his hand, pause for 30 seconds to look at his phone, glance through the window. Or he'd be in conversation with Luca, standing in a position that gave him a clear view of the room. He was checking on her, making sure she was safe, that Patricia was legitimate, that no new threats had materialized. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, Lauren found it strangely comforting. The day after Anthony's confession in his office, things had been awkward. Lauren had spent the entire day hyper-aware of his presence, of every interaction, of the weight of what he'd admitted. But by the end of the week, they'd fallen into something new. Not the rigid professionalism of before, but not quite personal either. A strange middle ground where Anthony asked about her therapy progress, and Lauren occasionally stayed late to help him review documents, and neither of them acknowledged the shift that had happened between them. Then Luca walked into Anthony's office on a cold December morning, with information that changed everything. Lauren was at her desk, reviewing the schedule for the following week, when she heard Anthony's voice through his open office door. "You're certain?" "Confirmed through 3 separate sources." Luca's voice was grim. "Melissa Blake disappeared 4 months ago. Last seen August 14th, walking home from her shift at a bookstore in Brooklyn. Security footage shows 2 men following her. They match known Bratva associates." Lauren's hand stilled on her keyboard. "Melissa Blake, Ryan's sister. Where is she now?" Anthony asked. "Warehouse complex near the Red Hook shipping terminal. We've had surveillance on the location for 2 days. She's being held in the main building, 2nd floor, room facing the water. How many guards? 6 rotating shifts, 2 men per shift. Standard Bratva security protocol for hostage situations. And Ryan? Still under surveillance. He hasn't attempted to contact Lauren or any of his former clients. He's holed up in New Jersey with his mother. Hasn't left the house in 3 weeks. Silence followed. Lauren knew she shouldn't be listening, but she couldn't make herself move. They took his sister to force his cooperation. Anthony said finally. He was never working for them by choice. Looks that way. Which means when you cut off his access to Lauren, you also cut off his ability to protect his sister. That's not my problem. Boss, if the Bratva realizes their intelligence stream has dried up, they might eliminate the sister. She's a liability now. More silence. Lauren held her breath. What was their endgame with Lauren? Anthony asked. From what we've pieced together, they were building a complete profile. Her routines, her vulnerabilities, her schedule. The plan was to grab her in about 2 weeks, use her as leverage to force concessions from you. Lauren's blood went cold. They were going to kidnap her. That was the working theory. Ryan had been feeding them information for 3 months. They had enough to make a move. Lauren stood slowly, walked to Anthony's door. Both men looked up when she appeared. How long have you known about this? Her voice was steadier than she felt. Anthony's expression didn't change. Luca just confirmed it. But you suspected. I suspected Ryan was gathering intelligence. I didn't know the Bratva's specific plan until now. Lauren stepped fully into the office. They were going to kidnap me. They were planning to, yes. But you were never in actual danger because I removed Ryan before they could act. She processed this, hands curling into fists at her sides. And his sister? She's being held because of information Ryan collected about me? She's being held because the Bratva uses family members as leverage. That's what they do. But he was gathering information because they had her, which means I'm connected to this whether I want to be or not. Anthony stood, came around his desk. Lauren, this isn't your responsibility. A 19-year-old girl is being held hostage because her brother tried to protect her by collecting information about me. How is that not my responsibility? Because the Bratva made that choice, not you. Ryan made that choice. You're a victim in this situation, not a participant. So, what happens to her? Lauren looked between Anthony and Luca. You just leave her there? That's not our problem to solve, Anthony said carefully. Yes, it is. Lauren's voice hardened. The only reason she's in danger is because of your world, your enemies, the fact that I work for you. If you can rescue her, you should. I don't involve myself in Bratva internal affairs unless they directly threaten my interests. They were planning to kidnap me. That sounds pretty direct to me. Anthony's jaw tightened. That threat is already neutralized. What about future threats? What about the next time they decide I'm useful leverage? Leaving their hostage situation unresolved doesn't make me safer. It just delays the problem. Luca cleared his throat. She's not wrong, boss. The Bratva knows we know about Ryan. They're going to retaliate somehow. We could frame this as a preemptive strike. Send a message that we don't tolerate civilian targets. Anthony looked at Lauren for a long moment. She met his gaze without flinching. You understand what you're asking me to do, he said quietly. I understand you're capable of getting her out safely, and I understand that 19-year-old girls shouldn't be used as weapons in your war. Something shifted in Anthony's expression. You're too good for this world. Maybe. But I'm in it anyway, so I might as well use whatever influence I have to do something right. Anthony turned to Luca. Start planning an extraction. I want options by end of day. Yes, sir. After Luca left, Lauren remained standing in the doorway. Anthony moved to the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city. You're accepting my security detail, he said, without turning around. Permanent driver, bodyguard when you're outside this building, electronic sweep of your apartment. I know, and you're not going to fight me on it. I understand why it's necessary now. Good. He turned to face her. Because the Bratva will notice when their warehouse gets hit. They'll figure out the connection, and they'll be angry. So, we make sure they're too busy dealing with their own problems to come after me. We? Lauren crossed her arms. I'm part of this now, Anthony. You made that clear when you bought a gym to protect me. So yes, we. He studied her face, searching for something. Most people would run, would quit, would distance themselves from this situation as fast as possible. I'm not most people. No. His voice dropped. You're not. The air between them felt charged, heavy with things neither of them was saying. I should get back to work, Lauren said finally. Lauren. He stopped her before she could leave. Thank you. For what? For caring about a girl you've never met. For making me remember that there are lines that shouldn't be crossed. Even in this life. She nodded once and returned to her desk. But she could feel his eyes on her back the entire time. That evening, Lauren stayed late again. Not because Anthony asked her to, but because she wanted to understand what was happening. Wanted to see the plans, Know the risks. Be part of the solution instead of just another problem he had to manage. At 10 p.m., they were alone in his office, maps of the Red Hook area spread across his desk. Luca had provided detailed layouts of the warehouse complex, guard rotation schedules, entry and exit points. The optimal approach is here. Anthony pointed to a service entrance on the east side. 2-man entry team suppressed weapons, neutralize guards quietly. Second team secures the perimeter, blocks reinforcements. We're in and out in under 10 minutes. Lauren leaned over the map, studying the layout. What about cameras? Luca's team will loop the feeds. As far as their security system is concerned, nothing will happen. And the girl, Melissa? How do you know she'll cooperate? She's been held for 4 months. She might not trust anyone. That's why we're bringing Ryan. Lauren's head snapped up. What? Ryan knows his sister. She'll trust him. We extract both of them together, relocate them somewhere safe. You'd do that? After everything he did? Anthony straightened, meeting her eyes. He was protecting family. I understand that motivation. And you're right. This situation exists because of my world. The least I can do is end it properly. They stood close together. The map between them. City lights painting shadows across Anthony's face. Lauren could smell his cologne, woodsy and clean. Could see the faint stubble on his jaw where he'd skipped his usual evening shave. Her hand rested on the desk near his. Not touching, but close. The accident, Anthony said suddenly. 6 months ago. It haunts me. Lauren went still. Anthony, every time I see you limp, every time you wince because your knee aches, every time I remember that you were in that taxi because of paperwork I needed filed, because you work for me, because being near me makes you a target. His voice was rough. It's a weight I carry every single day. I never blamed you. You should. You should have quit. Should have taken the settlement money and walked away from this life. From me. From all of it. But I didn't. She turned to face him fully. I chose to stay. Not because I felt obligated. Not because I was afraid to leave. But because I trust you. Because working for you. Being part of this world. It makes me feel like I'm contributing to something that matters. Lauren, I run a criminal organization. Nothing about this matters in any legitimate sense. You protect people. You maintain order. You have rules, boundaries, things you won't compromise on. That matters to me. They were inches apart now, neither of them sure how the distance had closed. You're too good for me, Anthony said quietly. Stop telling me what I am. I know who I am. I know what I want. And what do you want? The question hung between them, dangerous and necessary. Lauren's hand moved, just slightly, until her fingers touched his where they rested on the edge of the desk. The contact was electric. I want to stop pretending this is just professional. Anthony's breath caught. His hand turned, palm up, fingers lacing with hers. This is a terrible idea. Probably. You work for me. There are 100 reasons why this crosses every line. I know. And you're under pressure. The threat, the security concerns, everything happening around you. I won't take advantage of that. Lauren stepped closer, free hand coming up to rest against his chest. You're not taking advantage. I'm choosing this. Fully aware, completely conscious of every complication. Anthony's other hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Once we cross this line, there's no going back. Everything changes. Everything already changed. We're just finally admitting it. He leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met softly at first, testing, questioning. Then Anthony's control cracked, and he pulled her closer, kissing her with the intensity of months of suppressed want. Lauren melted into him, hands fisting in his shirt, letting herself finally feel everything she'd been pushing down since he'd confessed to jealousy 3 weeks ago. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Anthony rested his forehead against hers. This complicates everything, he whispered. I know. I can't promise you safety. Can't promise normalcy. My world is dangerous and dark and full of threats. I'm not asking for promises. I'm asking for honesty. For this. Whatever this becomes. He kissed her again. Softer this time. You have it. All of it. They stood together in his office. The map forgotten. The rescue operation temporarily pushed aside, letting themselves finally acknowledge what had been building between them for months. Outside, the city glittered with lights, oblivious to the shift happening 40 stories above its streets. Inside, Lauren Foster and Anthony Mancini crossed a line they'd both been carefully avoiding, and neither of them regretted it. 3 days after the maps had been spread across Anthony's desk, the rescue operation launched at 2 a.m. Lauren wasn't part of it. Anthony had made that explicitly clear. "You stay at the penthouse," he'd said that afternoon, voice leaving no room for argument. 4 guards remain with you. You monitor communications on the secure channel, but you do not leave that building under any circumstances. Lauren had wanted to protest, wanted to insist she could be useful somehow. But one look at Anthony's face told her this wasn't negotiable. So now she sat on the leather sofa in Anthony's penthouse, 43 floors above Manhattan, wearing one of his old sweatshirts because the apartment felt too cold and empty without him in it. A radio sat on the coffee table in front of her, connected to the secure frequency his team used. Static crackled. Voices came through intermittently, clipped and professional. Team 1 in position. Team 2 ready at the perimeter. Target building confirmed. 6 heat signatures on 2nd floor. Lauren pulled the sweatshirt sleeves over her hands, knees drawn up to her chest. 4 of Anthony's guards were positioned throughout the penthouse. 1 at the elevator, 1 in the hallway, 2 rotating between rooms. She was as safe as it was possible to be. But Anthony was walking into a building full of armed men who wouldn't hesitate to kill him. The radio crackled again. Initiating entry in 30 seconds. Lauren's heart hammered against her ribs. She checked her phone. 2:37 a.m. Entry successful. Moving to secondary. Silence followed. Long, terrible silence where Lauren counted her own heartbeats and tried not to imagine everything that could go wrong. Then, package located. Female, conscious, responsive, proceeding with extraction. Relief flooded through her. Melissa was alive. Contact. East stairwell. Engaging. The sharp crack of gunfire came through the radio, distant but unmistakable. Lauren's hands clenched into fists. More voices, overlapping, urgent. Reinforcements incoming. 3 vehicles, estimate 12 hostiles. Team 2, intercept and delay. Roger that. Boss is hit. Left shoulder. Still mobile. Lauren stopped breathing. Boss is hit. Anthony had been shot. She wanted to scream into the radio, demand status updates, know how bad the wound was, but she forced herself to stay silent. Distracting them now could get someone killed. Exiting building, package secure. Boss is ambulatory, wound appears superficial. All units fall back to rally point. Team 2 reporting 3 hostiles down, remainder retreating. Clean exit, moving to secondary location. The transmissions continued for another 10 minutes as the team extracted from Red Hook, switched vehicles, took evasive routes to ensure they weren't followed. Standard protocol that Lauren had learned about through months of working adjacent to Anthony's world. Finally, all clear. Returning to base. ETA 4 hours. 4 hours. It was 3 a.m. now. Anthony wouldn't be back until 7. Lauren stood, paced the length of the penthouse living room. The space was enormous, all dark wood and leather furniture and windows that showcased the glittering city below. She'd been here twice before, both times briefly, always maintaining professional distance. Tonight she'd moved in temporarily. Her overnight bag sat in the guest bedroom, clothes hung in the closet, toothbrush in the bathroom. Temporary security measures while the Bratva threat was active. But standing here in Anthony's sweatshirt, waiting for him to come home from a gunfight, nothing felt temporary. She tried to sleep, made it to the guest bedroom, lay on top of the covers fully clothed, closed her eyes. 10 minutes later, she was back in the living room, staring at the radio, willing it to provide updates it couldn't give. At 3:45, one of the guards brought her tea. "He's going to be fine, Miss Foster. Boss has been through worse." Lauren wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "How many times has he been shot? That I know about?" 4. Always comes back. The answer didn't comfort her the way it was probably meant to. At 4:15, the elevator chimed. Lauren was on her feet instantly, The guard at the elevator stepped aside as the doors opened. Anthony walked out first, followed by Luca and two other men Lauren didn't recognize. His white shirt was dark with blood on the left side, soaked through from shoulder to mid-torso. His jacket was gone. His face was pale but composed. Lauren's vision tunneled. All she could see was the blood. "You're bleeding." Her voice came out hoarse. "Flesh wound. Already been treated." Anthony moved toward her, steady on his feet. "Melissa is safe. She's at a private medical facility under protective custody. Ryan is with her." "You're bleeding," Lauren repeated, because she couldn't process anything else he was saying. "Lauren." He stopped in front of her. "I'm fine. There's blood soaked through your entire shirt. That's not fine." Luca cleared his throat. "Boss, you should let her look at it." The field dressing was quick, not thorough. Anthony's jaw tightened. "I said it's handled, and I'm saying I need to see it." Lauren set down her tea, hands shaking. "Please." Something in her voice made him relent. "Everyone out. Give us the room." The guards and Luca filed back into the elevator. The doors closed, leaving them alone. "Sit," Lauren ordered, pointing to the sofa. "Lauren, sit down, Anthony. Now." He sat, probably more from surprise at her tone than actual compliance. Lauren moved in front of him, reaching for the buttons on his blood-soaked shirt. Her fingers trembled so badly she could barely manage the first button. Anthony's hand came up to cover hers. "I'm okay. I promise you I'm okay. Let me see." He dropped his hand, allowing her to continue. She unbuttoned the shirt carefully, peeling the fabric away from his skin. Blood had soaked through to his undershirt too. She helped him ease the dress shirt off, wincing when he hissed in pain, moving his left arm. The undershirt came next. When she finally got it over his head, she saw the wound. A bullet had torn through the muscle of his left shoulder, entry and exit wounds both visible. Someone had packed both holes with gauze and wrapped the entire shoulder with medical tape, but blood was already seeping through the white bandaging. "It's not as bad as it looks," Anthony said quietly. Lauren's vision blurred. "You could have died, but I didn't." "You could have." Her voice broke. "You could have been killed, and I would have been sitting here listening to it happen over the radio." "Hey." Anthony's right hand came up to cup her face. "I'm here. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're shot." Tears spilled over despite her best efforts to contain them. "Where's the medical kit?" "Bathroom, under the sink." Lauren found the kit, brought it back to the living room. Professional-grade supplies, the kind that suggested this wasn't the first time Anthony had needed emergency medical care at home. She knelt on the sofa beside him, carefully removing the field dressing. The entry wound was clean, small caliber round. The exit wound was messier, but not as bad as it could have been. "You're lucky," she said, voice unsteady. "A few inches to the right and this would have hit your lung." "I know." She cleaned both wounds with antiseptic, trying to keep her hands steady. Anthony didn't flinch, didn't make a sound, just watched her face while she worked. "What were you thinking about?" Lauren asked quietly. "During the firefight, when you were shot." "You." Her hands stilled. "What?" "I was thinking about you, about how I'd promised to come back, and I couldn't break that promise." His dark eyes held hers. "Every decision I made in that building, every move, I was thinking about getting back here, to you." Lauren's chest ached. "Anthony, I love you." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious truth in the world. "I've been in love with you for months. Maybe since you came back from the accident and refused to blame me for it. Maybe since before that. But tonight, taking fire in that warehouse, all I could think was that I needed to survive because you were waiting for me." The bandage fell from Lauren's fingers. "You love me." "Yes. You could have died before I ever knew that. But I didn't die. I'm here." She kissed him then, hard and desperate, tasting salt from her own tears. Anthony's good arm came around her waist, pulling her closer, despite the pain it must have caused. When they broke apart, Lauren pressed her forehead to his. "I'm in love with you too. I've been trying not to be, trying to stay professional, trying to convince myself it was just proximity or gratitude or anything other than what it actually is. But I can't anymore. I'm in love with you, and watching you walk out of that elevator covered in blood was the worst moment of my life." Anthony's hand tangled in her hair. "I'm sorry." Don't be sorry. Just don't die. Promise me you won't die. I can't promise that. This life doesn't come with guarantees. And promise me you'll try. Promise me you'll fight to come home. That I can promise. He kissed her again. Softer this time. Always. Lauren finished bandaging his shoulder with trembling hands, then helped him into a clean shirt. The sky outside was starting to lighten. Dawn approaching over the city. You need rest, she said. So do you. They moved to Anthony's bedroom together, neither willing to be separated. Lauren helped him lie down, mindful of his injured shoulder. Then she curled against his right side, head resting on his chest, where she could hear his heartbeat. Alive. He was alive. Tell me about Melissa, she whispered. Scared but unharmed. Ryan's with her at the hospital. They're both under guard until we figure out what to do with them. And the Bratva? We'll retaliate eventually, but we sent a message tonight. Civilian hostages are off limits. Lauren traced idle patterns on his chest. What happens now? Now, you stay here until the immediate threat passes. Now we strengthen security protocols. Now I tell everyone in my organization that you're mine, and touching you means death. Possessive much? Completely. His arm tightened around her. You're the most important thing in my life, Lauren. I'm not taking chances with your safety. What about your safety? I've been doing this for 15 years. I know how to stay alive. You got shot tonight, and I'm still here. Still holding you. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Sleep. We'll figure everything else out later. Lauren wanted to stay awake, wanted to memorize this moment, the feeling of his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. But exhaustion pulled at her. The adrenaline crash finally hitting. She drifted off, wrapped in Anthony's arms. The man she'd tried so hard not to fall in love with, holding her like she was something precious, something worth fighting for, worth surviving for. When she woke hours later, sunlight was streaming through the windows. Anthony was still asleep beside her, breathing deep, and even despite the injury. Lauren carefully extracted herself, went to the kitchen, started coffee. Her phone showed 11 missed messages from Sarah, her best friend, wondering where she'd disappeared to. She'd have to explain eventually. Have to tell Sarah that she'd fallen in love with her boss, that her life had become something out of a thriller novel, that she was choosing this dangerous, complicated path anyway. But for now, she just returned to the bedroom and watched Anthony sleep, grateful he'd made it home, grateful for this chance they'd finally taken, grateful that whatever came next, they'd face it together. 2 days later, Lauren sat on the edge of the bed while Anthony slept behind her, his arm thrown protectively over the space she'd left. Her phone felt heavier than it should have. She stepped into the bathroom, closed the door, and called Sarah. The answer came on the first ring. Lauren? Sarah's voice cracked with equal parts anger and relief. Where the hell have you been? I've been calling you for days. I'm here. Lauren whispered, throat tight. I'm safe. I'm sorry. Something happened and I couldn't explain over the phone. I still can't. Not yet. But I'm alive. A shaky silence. Then Sarah exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for days. Are you hurt? No, not me. Lauren swallowed. I just needed you to know I didn't disappear because I stopped caring. You sound scared, Sarah said softly. I am, Lauren admitted. But I'm not alone. I'll tell you everything when I can. Soon, I promise. Another pause, then Sarah's voice steadied. But you meet me, okay? In person. Somewhere public. As soon as you can. I will. I'll text you a time and place. And if I go quiet for a while, it doesn't mean I'm gone. I hate this, Sarah murmured. Love threaded through the words. But I'm here. Call me the second you can. Lauren closed her eyes, letting the relief settle into her bones. Thank you. When she ended the call, her hands were shaking, but the weight in her chest eased, just enough to breathe. 5 days after Melissa Blake was pulled from the Bratva warehouse, Ryan was brought to Anthony's office under armed escort. He looked like he hadn't slept since the rescue. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His clothes were rumpled, and his hands shook slightly when Luca guided him into the chair across from Anthony's desk. Ryan expected to die. Lauren could see it in every line of his body. the way he held himself rigid, prepared for violence. She'd chosen to be there for this conversation. Anthony had offered her the option to stay away, to distance herself from whatever was about to happen. But Lauren needed to hear the truth directly from Ryan, needed to understand why. Anthony sat behind his desk, expression unreadable. Lauren stood by the window, arms crossed, watching. "Your sister is safe," Anthony said without preamble. "She's recovering at a private medical facility. No permanent physical injuries, though the psychological trauma will take time to heal." Ryan's composure shattered instantly. His head dropped into his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Thank you. God, thank you. You're welcome." Anthony's voice was neutral. "Now tell me why I shouldn't kill you anyway." Ryan looked up, tears streaming down his face. "I never wanted to betray anyone, especially not Lauren. She was kind to me, trusted me, but they had Melissa." "Explain." The story came out in broken pieces. Melissa had been walking home from her shift at a Brooklyn bookstore 4 months ago. 2 men grabbed her off the street, threw her in a van. Ryan received a video 3 hours later showing his sister bound and terrified, a gun pressed to her head. The message was simple: cooperate or watch her die. "They wanted information about my clients," Ryan said, voice hoarse. "Schedules, routines, vulnerabilities. Anyone who worked for someone important. I tried to refuse. Told them I couldn't do that to innocent people. They sent me another video." He pulled out his phone with shaking hands, navigated to a folder, turned the screen toward Anthony. The video showed Melissa being beaten, crying, begging her brother to do whatever they asked. Lauren's stomach turned. "So I cooperated." Ryan's voice broke again. "I collected information, passed it along, told myself I was protecting my sister, that I'd find a way to get her out eventually. But every day that passed, every client I betrayed, it got worse. When Lauren started training with me, I knew exactly who she worked for, knew she'd be valuable to them. And I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. Every time I thought about refusing, they'd send another video of Melissa." He showed them more evidence. Text messages from Bratva handlers giving him specific questions to ask. Photos of Melissa in different locations within the warehouse. Proof of life to keep him compliant. A meticulous record of 4 months of coercion and terror. "I never wanted to hurt Lauren," Ryan said, looking directly at her for the first time. "Everything I did to help you recover, that was real. The training program, the encouragement, watching you get stronger, that was the only good thing in my life during those months. And I destroyed it by using you anyway." Lauren uncrossed her arms. She should be angry, should hate him for the betrayal, for making her a target, for putting her in danger. But looking at his destroyed face, understanding what he'd endured, she couldn't find the rage. "Your sister is 19 years old," she said quietly. "Of course you did what they asked. Anyone would have. That doesn't make it right." "No, but it makes it understandable." Lauren moved closer to the desk. "You were protecting family. That's not evil, Ryan. That's human." Anthony watched this exchange with careful attention. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his desk. "I'm going to offer you 2 choices," he said. 1, you and Melissa disappear. New identities, relocation to somewhere far from New York, enough money to start over. You walk away from this life and never look back." Ryan nodded slowly. "And the second choice? You work for me. You've spent 4 months embedded with the Bratva's intelligence operation. You know their structure, their methods, their contacts. That information is valuable. Use it to help me dismantle their operation, and I'll protect both you and your sister. Permanent employment, legitimate security work, a chance to make this right. You'd trust me?" Ryan's voice was incredulous. "After everything I did, I'd trust your motivation. You protected family. I understand that loyalty. What I need to know is whether you can redirect it." Ryan looked at Lauren. "Would you be okay with that? Me working here? I'm not the one making this decision," Lauren said. "But for what it's worth, I believe people deserve second chances when they earn them. You were trying to save your sister. That counts for something. Then I want the second choice." Ryan straightened in his chair. "I want to work for you. I want to help take down the people who did this to Melissa, to me, to everyone they've hurt. And I want to prove that I'm more than what they forced me to become. Anthony studied him for a long moment. If you betray me again, you won't get a third chance. I understand. Good. Report to Luca tomorrow morning. He'll start your debriefing. After Ryan left with his escort, Lauren moved to stand beside Anthony's desk. That was generous. That was strategic. He knows things that will help us neutralize a major threat. You could have just extracted that information through other means. Anthony looked up at her. You wanted me to give him a chance. I'm giving him one. Because of me? Because you saw something worth saving. And I trust your judgment. Lauren leaned down and kissed him, soft and quick. Thank you. Over the next 2 weeks, Ryan's debriefing revealed critical intelligence. The Bratva's operation was larger than Anthony had suspected, with networks extending through multiple cities. But the most valuable information was about internal dynamics. Viktor Sokolov was unhappy. Alexei Volkov, the Bratva's leader, had become increasingly paranoid and reckless over the past year. His decisions were putting the entire organization at risk, creating unnecessary conflicts, drawing unwanted attention from law enforcement. Viktor wanted out. But leaving the Bratva wasn't something you did voluntarily. People who tried to walk away ended up dead. Anthony saw an opportunity. He arranged a meeting through careful intermediaries, a neutral location, security for both sides, terms that would allow Viktor to speak freely without immediate repercussions. They met in an empty warehouse in Queens at midnight. Viktor arrived with 2 bodyguards. Anthony brought Luca and 1 other man. You're taking a substantial risk being here, Anthony said. Viktor smiled coldly. So are you. Volkov would have me killed if he knew about this meeting, and he'd consider it an act of war from you, which is why we're both motivated to make this conversation worthwhile. What do you want, Viktor? Out. Clean exit, new identity, safe passage to South America. I have resources there, people who owe me favors. But I need to disappear completely. In exchange for? Everything. Volkov's location, his schedule, his security protocols, command structure of the entire organization, operation routes, money laundering channels, every piece of information you'd need to dismantle what he's built. Anthony considered this. Why turn on your own organization? Because it's not mine anymore. Volkov is driving us into the ground. 3 operations failed in the past month because of his paranoia. He's making enemies unnecessarily, refusing to compromise, treating loyal soldiers like disposable assets. The organization I joined doesn't exist anymore. And the girl, Melissa Blake? Viktor's expression flickered. I was against that. Holding civilians, especially teenagers, it's beneath us. But Volkov insisted. Said we needed maximum leverage to secure quality intelligence. He paused. I'm glad you got her out. You're the one who freed her. I gave the location to your people, yes. Consider it a gesture of good faith before this meeting. Anthony pulled out his phone, typed a quick message to his contacts. I'll need to verify your information before I agree to anything. Verify what you need, but do it quickly. Volkov already suspects something is wrong after the warehouse raid. If he figures out I'm involved, we both lose this opportunity. 3 days of verification confirmed that Viktor's intelligence was accurate. Locations, schedules, organizational charts, all of it matched what Anthony's people could independently confirm. The operation happened on a Friday night. 5 locations hit simultaneously. Anthony coordinated with 2 other Italian families who had their own grievances with Volkov. Warehouses, front businesses, safe houses, all targeted at exactly 9 p.m. The Bratva's command structure collapsed in under 2 hours. Volkov himself was at his favorite restaurant in Brighton Beach when Anthony walked through the door with 6 armed men. The other diners evacuated quickly. The owner, who'd been paying protection money to both organizations for years, simply nodded and disappeared into his office. Alexei Volkov sat at a corner table, a meal half finished in front of him. He was in his mid-50s, gray hair, expensive suit. The look of a man who'd spent decades clawing his way to power. Anthony Mancini. Volkov didn't stand. I wondered when you'd make your move. Your operation is finished. Every major asset seized or destroyed. Your lieutenants are either dead or in custody. It's over, Alexei. So you're here to kill me. Volkov reached for his wineglass with steady hands. Make it quick, at least. I'm here to offer you a choice. Anthony pulled out a chair, sat across from him. Go back to Russia, tonight. Abandon all operations in America. Never return. Do that, and you live. Volkov's eyes narrowed. You're letting me go? I'm removing a rival without starting a war that would cost both our organizations. Your bosses in Moscow won't be happy, but they'll accept your return if you frame it as strategic retreat. You get to live. I get permanent elimination of a threat. Everyone wins. And if I refuse, then you die here, in this restaurant. And the story becomes that you were killed by your own people during internal power struggles. Either way, you're out of my city. You choose how. Silence stretched between them. Volkov took a long sip of his wine, considering options that weren't really options at all. 2 days, he said finally. I need 2 days to arrange travel and settle affairs. You have 48 hours. After that, the offer expires. Volkov left New York 36 hours later, flying out of JFK under a false passport that Anthony's people had flagged but allowed through. The Bratva's American operations fell apart without him, absorbed by other organizations or dismantled entirely. Victor disappeared to Sao Paulo with a new identity and enough money to live comfortably. Ryan Blake became a fixture in Anthony's security team, working under Luca, proving his loyalty through consistent, dedicated service. Melissa started classes at Columbia in January, her tuition paid through a scholarship fund that Anthony had established. She met with a therapist twice a week to process her trauma, slowly rebuilding the life that had been stolen from her. And Lauren Foster stopped being Anthony Mancini's secretary. 2 months after the Bratva fell, Anthony restructured her role. She became his strategic advisor, sitting in on high-level meetings, offering perspectives that his captains couldn't provide, helping him navigate the increasingly complex landscape of his organization. Their relationship was public within the organization now. Everyone knew that Lauren was more than an employee, that she occupied a space in Anthony's life that made her both protected and influential. Some of the older captains had raised eyebrows initially, but after watching her handle sensitive negotiations and contribute meaningfully to operational planning, the skepticism faded. Lauren earned her position through competence, not just her connection to Anthony. The gym that Anthony had purchased was converted into something better. A community rehabilitation center offering free physical therapy to anyone who needed it, regardless of ability to pay. Patricia Simmons became the director, building a staff of qualified therapists and creating programs that helped dozens of people every week. Lauren managed the center as a side project, finding deep satisfaction in turning something born from jealousy and threat into genuine help for her community. On a cold February evening, Lauren stood on the terrace of Anthony's penthouse, looking out at the city lights. She wore a burgundy dress that she'd bought specifically for tonight, hair loose around her shoulders, finally comfortable in her own skin. Anthony came up behind her, arms wrapping around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. "You're thinking too hard," he murmured against her ear. "I'm thinking about how different everything is from 6 months ago." "Better or worse? Terrifying and perfect." She turned in his arms. "I never imagined my life would look like this." "Regrets?" "Not even one." Anthony reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Lauren's breath caught. "This isn't a proposal," he said quickly. "Not yet. But it's a promise. A commitment to a future where we figure this out together, where you're not just part of my life, but the center of it." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, elegant and simple, a single diamond on a platinum band. "Lauren Foster, will you continue choosing this complicated, dangerous, completely imperfect life with me?" Tears pricked her eyes. "That's the easiest question anyone has ever asked me." "Yes. Always yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her with the kind of intensity that still made her knees weak after months together. When they broke apart, Lauren laughed softly. "You know, this all started because you were jealous of my personal trainer. Best jealousy I ever experienced. You bought an entire gym, worth every dollar. They stood together on the terrace, the city spreading below them like a sea of lights. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something real from the chaos. Lauren had come to New York to work. She'd found family, purpose, love, and a future she never could have imagined. And laying in Anthony's arms, wearing his ring, she knew with absolute certainty that every dangerous, complicated, terrifying choice that had led her here had been exactly right.